Now help us understand just a bit of the evidence historically that was recorded, not just by the followers of this Jesus. Who documented that, and does it stand up to documentation today?
Well, Josephus knows that Jesus was executed under the authority of Pontius Pilate. Josephus is not a believer. He's a Jewish historian, lived in the 1st century, and for the most part a very good historian. He knows about Jesus. He knows he was put to death. And there are other historians who know about Jesus also. We also know about Jewish burial traditions and the fact that they were scrupulous in this regard. People weren't left unburied. Of course they were buried. And there's no question that Jesus died at the hands of the Roman authorities and would have been properly buried.
The biblical record lists eyewitness to a Jesus who was resurrected. And there are many accounts in the Bible of people who encountered the resurrected Christ. How reliable are those eyewitness accounts?
Well, I think the eyewitness accounts are reliable. First of all, they're eyewitness, but also because we have 3 different types of witnesses. We have witnesses who loved Jesus, they were his supporters, they were his followers, but we also have a group of those who were indifferent. His own brothers, James and Jude, apparently did not believe in him initially, yet they become witnesses to his resurrection. And then we have at least one person that we know of who was violently opposed to Jesus and his new movement, and that was Saul of Tarsus. And yet Jesus appeared to him, and he had no expectation to see the risen Jesus. He didn't think Jesus was resurrected from one moment. And yet when he met the risen Jesus on the road to Damascus, he was converted. His life was changed, and he went from being an enemy of the church to a strong advocate for the church. When you add that up, and this, by the way, this Paul writes several letters which we have written by his own hand, written in the 1st century. When you add up this testimony, I find it very compelling, very convincing.
We have a tendency to say, yeah, I know the biblical record says he passed through walls of some type and appeared to 500 people at once, and we all saw him. We have a tendency to say, well, that can't be valid for today. Why do we think that way?
I find that an interesting comment. We don't think it would be valid for today. That's the Western mind thinking. That's the modern Western mind. That's the thinking of the last 200 and some years. That's not the way the rest of the world thinks. And so I think this reflects a prejudice or a bias. I frankly think it reflects a closed-mindedness. We like to think that our science and our science alone can explain everything. And if we can't see it with a telescope or with a microscope, it isn't there. And I think we are deluding ourselves. And I think we need to be more open-minded to eyewitness testimony.
Even if it's from the 1st century?
Even if it's from the 1st century.
All right, so we have this eyewitness accounts then of a resurrected Jesus. What understanding does a resurrected divine body give us of life after death?
A resurrected person, and I'm not talking about a ghost story or a vision or a phantom, but somebody actually resurrected, somebody that you can see and you can touch. That gives us hope that there really is life after death. If God raised up Jesus, then we have hope that he can raise us up too.
So there is more to life than what happens when I'm placed in my coffin or in my urn.
As a Christian, I believe that indeed there is more to life. And I believe it primarily because of what God did in Christ, specifically in raising him from the dead.
So what can I expect after I die?
Well, I believe that after death there is something else. I don't believe for a moment that when this earthly body finally weakens and sickens and dies, that that's the end of the story. I believe that at death something else happens. I don't know if it's immediately or if it's a long time from now, and interpreters and theologians debate this, but I believe most certainly that after this life, something else happens. There's another life. And for those who have placed their faith in Christ, the Christ who was raised from the dead, I believe we share that resurrection with him.
So help me understand how I access the implications of this then, the resurrection hope. What do I do with that as someone who's learning about it?
Well, we know what we can do with the implications of this resurrection of Jesus because the resurrected Jesus told his disciples, what to do. He told them to proclaim his resurrection so that people would embrace it in faith. And in doing that, they then move right into the family of God. And they find themselves at peace with God, reconciled, and await their own resurrection someday in the future.
This is the Easter story, is it not?
That's what Easter is all about. That's why Christians celebrate Easter above all other holidays, because without Easter, well, there isn't any other holiday, and there are no grounds for hope. It's in the resurrection of Jesus that Easter has its meaning, and it's in Easter that we have a reason to have hope at all.
Something to think about every Sunday.
Indeed, every Sunday, not just Easter Sunday.
Dr. Evans, thank you very much.
Thank you.